From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. The caravan of Central American migrants continues to move through Mexico. This despite threats from the U.S. and Mexican governments to break it up. U.S. President Donald Trump has vowed to cut millions of dollars in aid to 3 Central American nations and described the caravan as a national emergency. The caravan is made up of thousands of Central Americans fleeing violence and poverty in their homelands. They are still more than 1,000 miles from the U.S. border. Many people in Mexico are expressing their solidarity with the caravan.
The only thing I can say to people is that they should be more human, that we should look into our hearts and imagine ourselves in their shoes, because what they're doing isn't easy. Us Mexicans like to criticize Donald Trump for the way he treats our people in the United States, and now we are acting just like him. We don't have any walls on our border, but sometimes we ourselves are the wall.
Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto has said the caravan will not be able to cross the U.S. border.
Para quienes han optado por mantener esta caravana fuera del orden legal, hago un llamado
to reconsider your decision, because if you continue with this, you will hardly be able to cross the United States or to legally stay in Mexico.
Our correspondent Pablo Perez is at the border between Guatemala and Mexico and brings us this report.
I'm standing on the shore of the Suchiate River. As we can see behind me is the bridge that divides the two countries. Where I'm standing now is an area known as the Coyotes Crossing. Rafts called camaras continue to move back and forth. They not only carry passengers, but also merchandise. Many of the migrants who came here from Honduras, after seeing that the bridge crossing has been closed by Mexican authorities, decided to instead use these rafts to cross the river and continue on their trek towards the U.S. They have spent more than 4 days here at the border between Guatemala and Mexico.
We want them to open the gate even if they let us through little by little. That is what we are asking God.
Help from the community has been fundamental to their survival. Travelers can get a meal at their makeshift camp thanks to their generosity.
We all been through this, all countries. We are having migrants sometime. My mom was a migrant.
People are still trying to make their way across the Suchiate River. The government of Honduras said that a large part of the caravan has already returned.
He's going to trick his people. Here we are, the ones who are hungry, who don't have a job. We suffer each day in the country. There aren't any jobs unless you are with the ruling party.
Women, many of them with small children, say that traveling in large numbers makes them feel safe during the dangerous journey.
We are not going back because what we want is to work. We don't want to go back because there aren't any jobs there.
The president of Mexico, Enrique Peña Nieto, warned the migrants that they won't reach their destination illegally. After more than 10 days on the road and now being stranded at the border, hasn't broken their morale. They remain determined.
Given the recent warnings of U.S. President Donald Trump against the migrants, some of them have even begun to call the government of Canada to provide them with asylum.
These people love Honduras, but they are here because the country has too many problems. They are refugees, and if they go back, they will be imprisoned or even killed. People are already receiving threats if they ever go back, so what we are asking the world, especially Canada, is to give us shelter. Because we already know that in the United States, Donald Trump doesn't want us. The situation in Honduras is critical. That is why people are migrating. We ask for support from human rights organizations and for any country to give us political asylum.
Social movements in Honduras plan to march from the city of La Barca to capital Tegucigalpa to demand the resignation of President Juan Orlando Hernández. Our correspondent Hugo Vera has more details.
We are in La Barca, about 4 hours far from Tegucigalpa. Social movements and citizens will start marching in a few hours to ask for the resignation of President Juan Orlando Hernandez. They said the president has to react to the situation the country is facing. They say Honduras is marred by corruption, which according to them has led to the massive exodus. Another issue they say is rampant is insecurity. These events have happened just as there are official calls for an investigation of Juan Orlando Hernandez for corruption.
Thank you, Hugo, for that report. And human rights organizations in Honduras asked the Mexican government to protect migrants.
Children, teenagers, and senior citizens' lives are at risk. So we urge authorities to guarantee the right to safe migration and other human rights for our people.
I think Donald Trump's politics have increased migration. He's not stopping migrants. All those people's going won't stop. They're gonna continue advancing.
The Workers' Party candidate Fernando Haddad has spoke out on lies about his life that he says were created as a campaign strategy by his opponent Jair Bolsonaro.
What they have done against me and my family does not make any sense. They reached a point in which they stole a Bible that was a gift to say they found it in the trash. The bishop who gave me that Bible came yesterday from Fortaleza to Sao Paulo to give me another Bible. They are really the worst of the worst. I am very sorry we have to go through all of this, because it is very sad. It is very sad what Bolsonaro represents.
Bolsonaro's views on torture and Brazil's former military dictatorship has alarmed former political prisoners. Bolsonaro has repeatedly praised one of the dictatorship's most notorious torturers, Carlos Alberto Brilhante Ustra. Hundreds of people were killed or disappeared during the military dictatorship due to a desire to wipe out what it called a communist threat.
Bolsonaro defends Ustra. Bolsonaro knows who Ustra was. He knows he has an authoritarian tendency, which is a tendency that, in my opinion, borders on savagery when he defends torture.
Bolsonaro's campaign has also been marked by verbal and physical violence against black Brazilians, women, and gender-diverse people. Earlier, we spoke to Lourdes Teodoro to know what his win will mean to these communities.
I think he is a threat above all, and very close to the fascist and Nazi ideas against black people, against people that have gender particularities, Indians. And Bolsonaro has expressed this wide open without no problem at all, as if it was absolutely normal for him to kill anyone that he doesn't want being part of Brazilian society.
We're now joined by Karina Damous, researcher in political science at the University of Brasilia. Hello, Karina. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Now, Bolsonaro had a very strong showing in the first round of the elections. What is the profile of the average voter who supports him?
We can say now, taking the last poll that was made by Datafolha 5 days ago, that Bolsonaro is basically he's winning in most of the segments of Brazilian population. Haddad at the moment is winning among the poorest ones in the northeast region and the people less educated. So basically, the higher the family income is of the voter, most likely he is to support Bolsonaro. But he's winning, and also the Bolsonaro supporters are very active in social media. But basically, he's winning in most of the segments of the population right now.
Now, how do you explain this support for Bolsonaro's very reactionary ideas?
There are a lot of aspects that we have to take into consideration to try to understand what is going on in Brazil right now. It's very shocking that we got this point. that having this far-right candidate that is openly despises democratic institutions and despise gender equality and despise have a racist and has a homophobic point of views and is gaining support. There is a massive disbelief in politics and the political system in Brazil right now. It also combined with a very strong anti-party workers' feelings, especially widespread, especially among the richest segments of the population. So we have a climate of opinion that is in favor of outsiders candidate. But we have to understand that there is a mass misinformation campaign, going on right now in Brazil, because Bolsonaro is not an outsider. He's been on politics in the almost last 30 years. So we have a combination of anti-political sentiment, anti-workers' party sentiment, and also we have a hated class that has been hidden in Brazil. The rich against the poor, the rich against the less well-educated people. That were the people that had most opportunity or had some opportunity for the first time during the Workers' Party leadership.
Now, Karina, one last question. How effective do you think the Ele Now campaign has been in deterring the rise of Bolsonaro?
I think the Ele Now campaign, in the first moment, has a not positive effect in a way that it stir up more the mood against the Fernando Haddad. It's not the reaction that the movement wanted, expected. But the Ele Now movement is very important to show the resistance, the level of resistance in Brazil against this far-right hate discourse, the far-right positions. So it's going to be important to show the world and to show the Brazilian society that there is a strong movement that is willing to resist against the far-right Bolsonaro's ideas.
Karina, thank you so much for talking to us today. That was Karina Duailive, researcher in political science from Brasilia. We'll take a short break now. More news in a minute. Welcome back. Severe weather is hitting both Mexico and the Eastern Caribbean. Hurricane William is about to make landfall on Mexico's Pacific coast, and residents are preparing for high winds and heavy rains. People in Mazatlan have sealed off their windows and doors with wooden planks. William is forecast to be one of the most powerful hurricanes to enter Mexico from the Pacific in recent years. Pope Francis has sent a message of solidarity to the people of Trinidad and Tobago after recent earthquakes and floods. 2 quakes shook the Twin Island over the past weekend, while it was still recovering from severe floods. The telegram from the Vatican reads, "Having learned of the destruction caused by the quakes and floods in Trinidad and Tobago, His Holiness Pope Francis expresses solidarity with all those affected by these natural disasters." The Development Bank of Latin America has indicated they will make a donation of $200,000 to assist the islands in relief efforts. The bank's president, Luis Carranza, expressed solidarity with the people of Trinidad and Tobago. He also expressed concern about the devastating effects of floodings and landslides. And after a weekend of cleanup, Trinidad and Tobago is still struggling to return to normal after having flooding throughout the island. At a recently concluded press conference, the Minister of National Security and Communications gave an update.
The Met Office has however, just turned its alerts downward. Its alerts downward. The riverine alert is now at orange, and our weather alert has now gone to yellow. So this is some good news. Unfortunately, overnight we did not experience the type of rainfall once again that was expected and predicted. That has worked in our favor. However, having said that, there's always a however, the Met Office has warned that this afternoon we can expect that there may be some heavy rainfalls as we experienced yesterday afternoon along the northern range and touching on western Trinidad.
The National Housing Trust has made 44 Jamaicans proud homeowners. These handing over the keys to a new homes at Castlewood and Greenville. Prime Minister Andrew Holness was there to witness their joy. On Twitter, he also pledged to continue building homes and communities to meet people's ambitions. A group of Venezuelan migrants is leaving Peru to return to their country. This as part of the 8th return to the homeland flight that has left from Lima. Our correspondent Jaime Herrera brings us more.
Here at Lima's International Airport, 98 Venezuelans are boarding the 8th flight leaving from Peru as part of the Return to Homeland plan. Among them are 27 children, 11 women, and 23 people who are sick and couldn't get medical services due to lack of money, making their condition even worse. Many of them say that they were expecting to improve their quality of life, but what they found here is strenuous work conditions that hurt their health. This flight will take them back to their homes in Venezuela.
Thank you, Jaime, for that report. The Argentinian lawmaker Máximo Kirchner, son of the former President Néstor and Cristina Kirchner, has appeared in court in a case of corruption. He's been investigated in a case known as Key Notebooks, along with his mother, brother, and several other people. It is alleged that they run a criminal organization involved in money laundering. Both Maximo and his mother denied any wrongdoing. They argued the case is part of a wider trend to try to smear progressive leaders through the courts. Colombian teachers' unions are staging a 24-hour national strike to demand a better budget for public education. About 220,000 teachers are expected to march in different cities across Colombia. Protesters want the government of Iván Duque to comply with agreements made to increase the budget signed back in June 2017. And on the eve of the teachers' strike, yet another social leader has been murdered in Colombia. Indigenous teacher José Domingo Ulque was shot in the chest in the department of Santander. He's the 31st social leader to lose his life since Iván Duque took office last August. Our correspondent in Bogota, José Manuel Jiménez, brings us more on the strike.
The nationwide teacher strike has started in Colombia. It will last for 24 hours as teachers demand that the government upholds previous budget agreements made last year. Unions insist that this is the duty of the government, and they say they need to improve the infrastructure of many schools now falling apart. They also demand that policies be put in place to guarantee public education for all, regardless of who's in power. This strike is happening on the heels of the murder of a teacher and indigenous social leader, José Domingo Ulcua, in the department of Santander. Teachers in the region continue to be threatened and be victimized in the armed conflict. In 2018 alone, 173 social leaders have been killed. Today's demonstrations began here, outside the Ministry of Education, and will make its way to Plaza Bolívar.
For the past 12 years, the government of Bolivia has implemented a plan that drastically reduced the number of school dropouts. Let's find out more in this report.
Since 2006, the government awards public school students a cash bonus of around $30 for their attendance and finishing the school year.
My kid has been receiving this bonus since he started elementary school. He is about to enter middle school now, and every year at around this time he gets very excited for the Juancito Pinto incentive.
This initiative helps students to buy school supplies, to buy new shoes, anything they may need for the start of the school year.
This program is named after a child hero who was a military drummer during the War of the Pacific, where he lost his life. the Juancito Pinto bonus has drastically reduced the rate of school dropouts. In elementary schools, it's down from 4% to 1%, and in high school, from 8% to 4%.
Kids in rural areas will usually drop out of school, but today those numbers have gone down and kids are remaining in school.
This initiative was one of the first programs created by the government of Evo Morales after taking power. It's funded by the revenue of 22 state-owned companies.
Antes no había Juancito Pinto porque no teníamos empresas del Estado.
These initiatives didn't exist before because we had no state-owned companies, but for the past 12 years that changed. And these programs can only improve as more industries are nationalized.
También el día en que desaparezcan las empresas del Estado.
Over 2 million students will receive the Juancito Pinto bonus this year, as the state invests about $64 million in the program.
We'll take a short break now. Don't go away. Welcome back. United States National Security Advisor John Bolton visited Russia on Tuesday. He met with President Vladimir Putin and discussed the worsening relationship between both nations. Putin expressed regret at recent U.S. sanctions, while Bolton assured him President Trump wishes to work things out.
Frankly speaking, it is sometimes surprising for us to see the United States taking unprovoked steps against Russia, which we cannot call friendly. Basically, we don't even respond to any of your steps, but it still goes on and on.
And to begin, as you indicated, I think President Trump would look forward to seeing you in Paris on the sideline of the celebration of the 100th anniversary of the armistice. Because despite our differences, which exist because of our different national interests, it's still important to work in areas where there's a possibility of mutual cooperation.
Zimbabwean opposition leader Nelson Chamisa has called for dialogue between his party and the government. This to resolve the country's worsening economic crisis. Chamisa has accused President Emerson Mnangagwa of failing to take action, leading to an economic meltdown that caused severe shortages. The deepening economic crisis comes less than 3 months after Mnangagwa won the general election in July.
What is definitely clear is that there is absence of leadership. The nation is orphaned. The nation is parentless. And what is necessitated this is obviously the conduct and behavior of Mr. Mnangagwa and his team.
Renowned Trimbigonian The Mighty Shadow, real name Winston Bailey, has died. Bailey was an inventive musician who spoke of his music, art, and more than a calling. The Mighty Shadow won the most popular song for Carnival, known as the Road March, in 1974, with his classic Calypso Bass Man, and again in 2001 with Stranger. And the office of the Prime Minister is remembering the Mighty Shadow as a true original who transformed the Calypso world. It says Winston Bailey, the Mighty Shadow, revolutionized the Calypso world with his haunting sound and unique delivery. He was an original in all his various musical creations.
Something wrong. Something wrong. Something wrong. I had a drafting a plan to treat you like a human. So many things you will get. Just have to hold on till after death. You're trying to fool me like they think I'm stupid.
We come to the end of this news brief. These and many other stories you can find on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.